Zagreus wields the infernal arms, melting hearts with boyish charms, battles up the river Styx, takes advice from goddess Nyx. Of his father he is not afraid, stands up to meet old Hades. Maybe he just needs a hug. Brave young Zagreus, brave god of blood. Hades is a jewel of a game. It may be the most polished gem of a game I've ever played. A game that has been distilled, nurtured, pruned and fine-tuned to the most glimmering luster possible for its scope. This is not a game that tries to do everything, or necessarily innovate. There are no concepts here that games haven't seen before, but just a perfectly complementary course of tropes and mechanics, honed into a beautiful art. To put it succinctly, it feels good to play something so competent at what it sets out to do. The developers, Supergiant, are famous for their critically applauded indie games. I haven't played any of them myself, but I do remember well when Bastion was first released and all of the attention it received. After sinking over 100 hours into Hades so far, I definitely feel like a look back into their back catalogue would be well worth it for me. Hades has won all kinds of awards, and had all kinds of reviews, and a lot of people at this point are probably thinking, yeah, we know all about Hades already, played it years ago. I also know that you get the warm fuzzies watching long-winded videos about your favourite games, so let's get down to business, eh? Oh, and here's your warning. This video contains in-depth spoilers. I won't be taking a nuanced trip through the plot, but I will be zooming in on a lot of detail, guaranteed to spoil. Wikipedia describes Hades as a roguelike action dungeon crawler. It's pretty spot on. It's isometric, the levels are handmade, but things like the monsters, order of levels, rewards, power-ups are random. Well, except for the ones that aren't. Hades is also often described as a roguelite because it features some permanent upgrades that persist across deaths, as well as a bunch of other features that place it outside the strict roguelike definition. I've seen it put that it's a roguelike for people who don't like roguelikes. I personally don't have much experience with the genre. The concept appeals to me, but I can't really name one that's ever hooked my interest until Hades. The glossy accessibility of the game, as opposed to the intimidating difficulty, really got me. Not that Hades isn't difficult. In fact, Hades' difficulty is a wonderful granular thing that the game encourages you to tweak and tune to keep yourself challenged and the game interesting. I'll come back to that later. Supergiant's experience as a developer is on full show in this game. This game wrote a whole bunch of stuff on the board, picked just the stuff that worked and threw the rest in the bin, and then knocked every single one of those ideas out of the park. The art and visual style of the game is just dripping in gorgeous, thoughtful, rich detail. The music is wonderfully scored, produced and directed. The UI is straightforward and only what it needs to be while being beautiful at the same time. The character writing and voice acting is superb. The actual mechanics, the hitboxes, the responsiveness to your input, the animations, all of the stuff on the actual coalface of your interaction with the game has been honed. The maturity of this developer and their process is just abundant in every tiny little facet of this game, and it's an absolute joy to behold and experience. A big part of that maturity is knowing their limits. For example, for the kind of game it is, the story elements are spot on, but there's no pretense to being an all-consuming immersive sim here. Those elements are just what they need to be to get the job done. And the same goes for everything here. The game spent a year in early access, and it's clear for Supergiant that time spent gathering feedback and seeing how their ideas worked amongst real gamers was put to excellent use, refining Hades into a masterwork. So, the basic concept is you are Zagreus, son of the Lord of the Underworld. Hades, naturally. It appears you've reached the equivalent of the rebellious teen phase of growing up divine, and the house of Hades at the bottom of the underworld is feeling far too small for young Zagreus. His father is a controlling, always disappointed stresshead who is obsessed with his very office boss-like job of running the underworld. This rubs on Zagreus the wrong way, so he jumps out his window and starts fighting through the underworld in an attempt to reach the surface, and just possibly find some answers, as there is plenty your dad isn't interested in teaching you. This brilliant setup is the ideal for the roguelite structure the game has. This piece of narrative works diegetically as part of the mechanics. Upon every death, the river Styx claims you, and back to the house of Hades you go. It lines up with the Greek mythology, it lines up with the roguelite gameplay mechanics, and it lines up with the story they have chosen to tell. You're the broody teenage god that can't die. That is, if you are defeated and slain, you simply crawl out of the river Styx back at your dad's house as you were. Well, maybe minus some run-specific buffs. Thing is, the other members of your household and the greater pantheon all have a purpose. Your father is lord of the underworld. Nyx is the mother of night. Thanatos is death. Hypnos is sleep. But what is Zagreus the god of exactly? Zagreus doesn't know. Hades doesn't know. Your mentor Achilles has some theories, but nobody seems to know for certain. And thus is the kernel of most of the unspoken motivation at the centre of Zagreus' story and character. He's a god, but he's still a broody young adult. Not unpleasantly angsty or anything, in fact rather charming, but confused and directionless all the same. Hades does attempt to get you to take on some of the clerical work involved in running the underworld, but you can just imagine Zagreus sitting there filing parchments away asking himself if he was really born to be the god of filing cabinets. So, Zagreus rebels, takes up arms, and escapes into the Greek mythological underworld to fight his way to the surface. There are other elements at play in the premise and story, as you unwind, such as the question over Zagreus' mother. But even the motivation I've already mentioned isn't revealed immediately. The way the game tells its story and lets you get to know the characters is, as many reviews have mentioned, alike to the method used in many Japanese visual novels. A character portrait showing one of many emotions pops up, along with a fully voice-acted dialogue box. You can only initiate these dialogue boxes once per run, or death, from Zagreus' point of view. Thus forms one of Hades' strongest hooks. You aren't just motivated to keep repeatedly throwing yourself at the underworld and dying because of the fun, skill and challenge of the game, you're also motivated to do it in order to progress the story and get to know these characters better. If I get out into the underworld one more time, even if I die immediately, I might just get to find out a little bit more about Achilles or Orpheus or whoever. This is, I feel, the best technique which the developers have used to shore up this game into a real winner. Every time there is a gameplay mechanic, it gets a slathering of motivating story and character work to deepen and broaden it. Take Skelly, a friendly skeleton who has been paid to essentially be your living practice dummy. He's very obviously there to give you something to practice a bit on to get a feel for the weapons and moves before you commence a run. But the developers also give him at least 100 voiced lines exploring his past, his character, although he especially likes to have tight lips and keeps things mysterious. This is used again with 3 characters you can run into out in the underworld: Sisyphus, Eurydice and Patroclus. Each of these provides respite from the stress of fighting through the underworld, as well as buffs, but each of them also have excellent stories for you to be involved in. The developers knew that this was such a strong point of their game that they even included a kind of god mode for people who just wish to explore the characters and story with the actual difficulty and challenge reduced. I haven't tried it myself, but if it was for you, leave a comment about what the experience is really like using it. This game for me definitely hits the right balance of difficult and accessible. A single run, once you've gotten good enough to progress to the end, is between about 20 minutes on the very fast side to 45 minutes on the very slow side. This is great, as it gives you a finite range in which, when you sit down for a good old round of Hades, you know it's going to take. Give or take 15 minutes or so for pausing and dawdling and whatever else fills the gaps when gaming. If I find myself with a spare hour somewhere, I know I can get a real polished thrill out of picking up the controller and booting up Hades. While you are playing, you need to concentrate, and this game can be very, very good for even physiologically locking you in a flow state, but it is only for just long enough for you to have a blast without getting exhausted or overwhelmed. Well, at least for me. I would say that I'm reasonably good at this game. I'm no master or speedrunner or anything, but I'm not only just scraping by the narrowest margins on most runs either. I know there are some Hades experts watching my footage and who are probably feeling embarrassed for me, but I'll stand by the idea that I'm not outright bad at this game. So I feel confident that anyone who considers themselves a competent gamer, so long as you have some persistence, this game is very surmountable. I'm sure there are bullet hell shmup players and roguelike gods that find this game a complete snooze fest, but for a boring old mortal like me, this is one of the best games I've ever played for the sheer thrills of the gameplay. The difficulty is very well implemented. Once the game's certain you are over the basic challenge of completing runs, it unlocks this thing called the Pact of Punishment, where you get to choose ways to increase the difficulty of the game in return for further rewards. This allows you to control the way you are drip-fed new challenges in the game, which marries in turn with the combinations of weapons and buffs for a system that lets you adjust the challenge based on the way you are choosing to play the game, for it to be as optimal an experience as possible for you, and it's diegetic and it's fun. My brother told me that Supergiant have done this in other titles before. As mentioned earlier, this is my first Supergiant game, and I've seen similar in other games, but every time you get a nuanced, granular difficulty setting, it makes me wonder why it just isn't more common. Feel free to answer that one in the comments too. I reckon something involving time, money, direction and such. I showed Hades to a friend of mine once, and less than a minute in he declares, "So, it's Diablo 2. It's exactly like Diablo 2 in every way. What's the big deal?" And then I had to overlap the game with Diablo 2 in my head and explain how it wasn't like Diablo 2 to keep him interested. As I told him, I absolutely agree with the notion that this game draws inspiration and homage from it, but it just plays and operates fundamentally differently. It's isometric and visually presents itself in a deliberately Diablo 2 evocative kind of way. Like when you're in Asphodel on the bank of a river of magma and this song starts playing, and a few creatures show up, and bam, you're back in the year 2000 listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers on the dial-up internet, preventing your mum from using the phone while you begged for Stone of Jordan on Battle.net. So yeah, I do get it is exactly like Diablo in every way, except every way that actually matters. Diablo is an RPG. You have an inventory and a stat sheet, and you build, adjust and work on your character as you explore your setting and story until you beat the final boss. While the exact nature of the loot and the when and where of experience for leveling are somewhat randomized, you get control over what you wear and where your points go and how your build plays out. Hades has no inventory or visible stat screen you can modify. As you complete each room, you are offered a random-ish bonus or reward of some kind that only sticks around until you die or complete a run through the game. Rather than explore a grand story with levels and maps, instead you explore it through runs through the entire game, each time facing the same bosses or variations on them at least. It is much narrower in scope, but also unlocks a dizzying array of options and combinations through its structure. You are offered a reward as you complete each room. Sometimes those rewards are power from a god, called a boon in this game. Your relatives up on Olympus have heard you were trying to escape the underworld you were born in and have never left before, and they are besotted with the kind of suitably mythic, legendary kind of godly struggle you were in. So they grant you powers. You are offered 3 random options each time, and you get to choose one. As you collect these boons, they modify your moveset and begin to interact with each other, sometimes even explicitly through duo powers. In Diablo 2, you click somewhere and walk over to it, or you click on a mob and you hit the mob. Hades is a twitchy controller game with an independent stick just for moving around, A to dash, X for attack, Y for special attack, B for magic kind of thing. The combination of your boons layering on this tuned to perfection control scheme ensures that almost every run will wind up mechanically unique enough to feel different from any other, but also familiar enough that you don't feel like the entire thing was frustratingly out of your control. It's masterful the way the actual gameplay itself walks the tightrope between novel and familiar, enticing and intimidating, fundamental and thrilling. Diablo 2 is like a huge map laid out on a table that you pore over methodically, strategically. Hades is like the patterns in a crystal that you hold up to the sun. It is in many ways a much smaller thing than a great big battle map, but with a slight shift in the light, it becomes another permutation of itself. The same static object gifting you infinite variation. With both, you can continue to invest time into them and get fun out, but the finite map will be fun until a point where the crystal will remain fascinating in short bursts forever, though will never hold your attention for very long. Before you start a run, you get to make some preliminary decisions. First, you consult the Mirror of Night for a bunch of permanent buffs and bonuses that you unlock slowly between runs and can switch out. The way you configure this mirror and the combination of powers you choose here can have profound effects on the way you play the game. I have a groove I'm pretty happy working with at the moment, so I'm not making many changes, but this is an excellent place to shake the game up and make it more interesting if it's getting stale. And just a quick note, I actually forgot to record the Mirror of Night prior to the run, so I came back and recorded some footage a little bit later and stuck it in here. Just a note, moving right along. Next, you enter the room with Skelly. Here, foremost, you can pick your weapon and weapon aspects, another 2 layers in which you can alter the way this game plays. There are 6 weapons, and each of them have 4 aspects, making a total of 24 different ways Zagreus can tear the underworld down. Then, you can also pick your trinkets and your companion summons in your keepsakes cabinet. These 2 choices, one giving you a powerful bonus and the other a powerful attack or ability, further allow you to refine and hone the kind of gameplay you will experience. You can then take the opportunity to practice a bit on Skelly here. You know, go on, beat him up a little. Try out your powers, try out your weapon and all your other choices. But once you finish doing that, the next step is to engage the Pact of Punishment. Only available once you beat old Hades a good number of times, this lets you decide how hard the game is going to be, with incentives built in to always challenge yourself. I really love this, and I give an example. See, because I don't really like having to work under time pressure, the difficulty setting that puts a time limit on is the one I most avoid, unless I feel super confident with a weapon. Meanwhile, the jury summon setting that just adds more enemies in is a favourite way for me to make the game more exciting and fun, as well as more difficult for myself. Similarly, I love extreme measures. It makes the bosses harder, but I'm very apprehensive about the power that takes away your boons from the end of each area of the underworld. For another kind of player, I'm sure there are plenty of them watching out there right now, wouldn't dream of playing the game without some of the ones that scare me the most on. You have a heat threshold, and your heat is countered by these flaming skullboys, which you get by choosing these granular difficulty options. Once you have enough skulls to beat the threshold, you unlock more high-tier rewards from beating each boss: Titan's Blood, Ambrosia, and Diamonds. If you do a run at a threshold you have already surpassed, you only get regular rewards. On top of that, the game also incentivizes you to keep ratcheting the difficulty up. You can unlock trophy statues this way, who chill in the lobby with Skelly, of which I only have the first unlocked at the date of editing this video. When taken all together, you have 4 separate menus operating here, being the Dark Mirror powers, weapons and weapon aspects, trinkets and companion summons, and finally the Pact of Punishment. Choices on these 4 combine with each other to determine how the game will play for you each and every run. And this is before you get the majority of the way the gameplay evolves and develops that comes during your run. Each choice you make on each menu when taken by itself seems a small choice, but when accumulated together it adds up to a different way to play the game and makes up the foundation for any particular build of Zagreus you wind up with. The run I am using, I just recorded before I began writing this section of the script. It took 40 minutes on the in-game count, but the recording was 1 hour and 7 minutes long, including a couple of minutes of desktop and pausing and menus and dawdling and stuff. I'd say playtime on the session was realistically a bit over 1 hour. I choose the bow, known as Coronact, the heart-seeking bow, as my weapon and go with the original aspect of Zagreus, as I have upgraded it to have plus 15% crit chance, and that's a powerful thing in a ranged weapon. I should note that the bow is my best weapon with the most escapes, but also one of your weapons randomly has a dark energy glow around it, or chthonic energy as they call it in game. Picking that weapon for the run lets you earn bonus darkness, a resource you use to unlock powers on the Dark Mirror or spend on other bonuses. I also have a power unlocked on the Dark Mirror that heals me and gets me extra total health whenever I pick the stuff up. So I've pretty much always been picking whatever weapon the game suggests with the chthonic energy aura. I doubt it's entirely random, but I'm quite happy letting the game pick the weapon for me, as I think it very rarely, if ever, gives you the same weapon twice, and the variety is what I love. You can obviously just grind on a particular weapon if it really suits you, but anyway, I picked the bow. Then I go to the trinkets, and choose to go with Thanatos' trinket. This lets me earn 2% stacking bonus damage per room that I clear without taking damage myself. Then I choose Sisyphus' companion summon, which does some damage and drops health, darkness and other rewards, which can be a real lifesaver in boss battles and buy you precious times and opportunities. I approach the Pact of Punishment. The pact tells me in order to earn the good reward, I need to get the pact to 13 flaming skullboys. The good rewards are Titan's Blood, Ambrosia, and Diamonds, and you want them because they let you unlock the best dialogue and character interactions, let you upgrade your weapons and companion summons, and buy you the coolest renovations for your home, like new songs for Orpheus to sing. So to do this, I can get 10 Flaming Skullboys straight up by just enabling the hardest boss battle for all the bosses, by taking 4 levels of extreme measures. The final level of extreme measures is still scary for me. I have at the point of recording only beaten Hades himself with this ultimate mode unlocked only once before, and he's creamed me about 7 times or something. To make up the extra 3, I unlock 1 skull with jury summons for 20% more enemies, and 1 level of benefits package worth 2 skulls that makes armoured foes have extra powers. Then I'm on my way to begin my escape from the underworld. Just pausing for a moment before we begin, to note that there are 4 main areas of the underworld that Hades presides over: Tartarus, Asphodel, Elysium, and the entry to the underworld, the Temple of Styx. Each area has its own distinct visual style, enemies, and traps. The house you and your family live in is located in Tartarus, an ever-shifting dungeon where wicked shades are tortured, so when you jump out your window, that's where you land. I read in my in-game stats that the most chambers I've ever cleared in a run is 77, but we'll count each room as we go and see how many this run gets. Room 1 is always the same. You land here outside the door to your dad's place, and a complimentary boon awaits you to assist in your attempt. This time, I got Demeter, the goddess of seasons, who gives you ice and freezing style powers. She offers me 3 bonuses, 1 for my attack, 1 for my special, and 1 for my dash. I mull it over, and I choose the attack. The bow's attack has the longer range than the special, so I can stay outside the enemy attack distance and slow down my opponents with Demeter's chilling power. I figured this might help me avoid damage and rack up bonus damage from the Thanatos trinket. Already the choices you make begin stacking up on your strategic planning, in Room 1 before you ever hit an enemy. I proceed forward to find an armoured lout. Armour gives enemies a golden outline and takes damage before their health, and critically it makes them immune to being staggered, something you can easily come to rely on when dealing with group situations. Anyway, I make short work of him and collect my plus 2% from Thanatos. The icon on the door tells me if I complete the next room, I'll get some sweet, sweet darkness. So I open the door and proceed. Room 2. Several more armoured louts and some traps on the floor to avoid. I mostly dash around, and I make short work of them and collect another 2% from Thanatos. There are 2 doors out of this room. Once I finish the louts off and collect my darkness as reward, I have to pick 1 to proceed. 1 door bears a pomegranate, and the other the symbol of the god Poseidon. By choosing doors, you choose your bonus, and thus create your build as you play the game. I choose Poseidon, and it makes me very excited, as Poseidon's boons are in my opinion the most powerful in the game.
Always a pleasure.
Room 3 has a mix of witches and louts, but I find that my Demeter powered attack can almost one-shot the witches, and it makes the room rather easy with some liberal dashing. Poseidon offers me bonuses for my special and my cast and my dash. I choose to empower my special attack, as Poseidon's power pushes foes away, and the special for the Zagreus aspect of the heart-seeking bow is a fast attack that sprays across a wide arc around the room. Combined with knockback, this makes for an excellent way to give Zagreus some space whenever enemies get too close for comfort. I then have 2 doors I can choose, one that gives me gems and 1 darkness. I choose the darkness as the potential for a little max health bonus outweighs the gemstones, which are used for house upgrades mostly. Add another 2% from Thanatos, and that's room 3. This room full of traps has some slow-moving thugs, and the proximity mine earn things known as pests. I am able to make mincemeat of these slow enemies with my now 2 powerful ranged attacks. Another 2% from Thanatos is destined for me here. Rather than pick the door as the reward, I choose to jump down the Chaos Gate for a penalty of 21 HP. Chaos will offer you 3 usually very powerful bonuses that unlock after you have progressed the stipulated amount of rooms, with a disadvantage of some kind. Some of these can be devastating, whereas others merely inconvenient. Similarly, some of the rewards can be ridiculous, but there's a lot of chance here. I choose the added shot option. That means I take 4 damage every time I use my cast power. After 4 encounters, my cast will permanently do plus 52% damage. My reasoning being, I could easily get away without using the cast for the next 4 rooms, but in the late game, the cast and extra damage it would do would be very useful. Even though I don't know what kind of cast it will be yet, the cast almost always has good damage, so 52% seemed like a great deal. I should note that this was actually a very hard decision, and the other options were also very good in this case. Then I jump into a door that promises coin in my future. This room is crawling with pests, some of them armoured, and there's a lad or 2 in there to spice things up. Once again, this is pretty easy with my powerful attack and special. Although I forget, I just made a deal with Chaos and accidentally used my cast and do 4 damage to myself. Fortunately, it doesn't count towards my keepsakes bonus, and I get the plus 2% here as well. The only door has a chthonic key on it. I progress without hesitating.
Got through without a scratch.
Opens with some thugs who go down fast. After that, some armoured numbskulls spawn in. But so long as I stay mobile and keep the dashing up, their relatively fast movement and attack is negated. The chill power on my attack slows the thugs down and buys me even more time on avoiding them. My special works marvellously, keeping groups at bay. I get another 2%. And now's a great time to note some of the details in the visual presentation. The eyeball thingy, the use of dark blues against red on the blood-like river sticks, the patterns on the tiles of the floor. It's just all so beautiful. A fishing point is in the room, and I catch a knucklehead. Then I have an option of going to the store or getting a Prometheus hammer reward. Prometheus's hammer modifies your weapon and can be very powerful, so I opt for that. This room is full of witches, and then later, thugs as well. In Tartarus, these are all very easy to dodge and annihilate with my powerful attacks, but harder variations on the witches exist in other parts of the underworld. Nevertheless, I slay, and collect another tidy 2%. Now, do you see the chest thing in the room? These are known as infernal troves. These are caches of some of the lower tier rewards that as soon as you open, spawn in more perilous foes, and then they have their contents begin to decay over time. They are a challenge that forces you to prioritise speed over care, perhaps taking you out of your comfort zone with a weapon, or maybe being an easy reward for you to cheese. A tempting gamble, and just another way this game likes to shake it up for you as a player, and keep you on your toes every single run. So, I choose Piercing Volley as my upgrade for a 400% damage bonus to my enemy armor. So now my special is a useful tool to deal with armored opponents. Looking at my 85 of 110 HP, I think this is worth the gamble, as I'm likely to slay all of the foes before the trove decays to a point where it won't completely heal me. I'd be a fool not to take it. It spawns in some thugs, witches, and some armoured ringers, proving my choice of Piercing Volley for my Daedalus upgrade useful immediately. Because I have 2 very powerful attacks, I'm able to clear this in time and manage to save a whopping 90 HP, and an enjoyable little fight it is. Though I do take some damage, not enough that I don't come out completely healed. There is only one door out of the room, and it has Dionysus on it, and an icon indicating a mini-boss. The mini-boss encounter is a pair of armoured slam dancers, one of the easiest mini-bosses in the game, and with my Piercing Volley that pushes them away, I'm easily able to strip their armour and stun lock them, wiping them out quickly. I get my 2% bonus on this one. When Dionysus offers me a boon, I choose Premium Vintage. It has a bonus to buff my maximum HP, and it gives me a bottle of nectar, which, thanks to an ability I have, gives me an automatic level up to one of my boons. Nectar also comes in handy for giving to gods and other underworld characters for more story. Coincidentally, the reward for the next room is also a bottle of nectar. This room has armoured pests, then numbskulls with armoured pests, and then louts as well. They are cleared quick. I want you to check out the extra abilities, the purple circle thingies on the armoured pests. That's one of the conditions I've selected on the Pact of Punishment. I'm not actually across what those armour related powers do yet, but I seem to have no trouble with them at this point anyway. I finish them off, I collect my nectar and level, and then choose the room with the exclamation mark, which means that Tartarus' special character Sisyphus is in the next room. Ah, Sisyphus and Baldy hanging out like always. I grab some of Charon's opals off Sisyphus and give Baldy some nectar, and head to the next room with the pomegranate reward. Nothing to see here, folks, just a little NPC interaction. Although, to note, I am using him as my companion summon on this run. I think it's pretty cool that the developers put in these islands. Little breaks in the rhythm of the run. Rooms for you to relax in for a second before you head back into the slaughter of the underworld. It really helps with keeping the pacing of the game, making the exciting rooms more exciting. Can you say teeming with brimstones and witches? There's lots of well-telegraphed slow projectiles and beams to dodge. My leveled up frost attack can one-hit them, and so I have a great time taking them down and getting my 2%. Part of the magic of this game is how well everything is telegraphed. In this slow chamber, it's easy to see the little white flash or animation before an attack. It's a critical part of the game feel, as they are some of the primary cues which you respond to dodge. And you might have noticed that I do a lot of dodging in this game. It's also a big part of why, when you do get hit, that you feel more like it's your own fault, and even if you're frustrated, you just can't hold it to the game and pretend it's unfair. There's also a well of Charon here, a kind of shop to spend my opals in, but I decide not to get anything this time. I exit with the door indicating the proper shop is next. I have 379 opals. That's plenty for this point in the game. This is the room before the boss of Tartarus, so I check my character progress and I'm impressed I got out of Tartarus with a full 20% global damage bonus from Thanatos. With a level 3 Frost main attack and a level 2 piercing knockback special, I'm confident I'm off to a great start. I then buy a cheap Dionysus boon from Charon, the Underworld's ferryman. I go with After Party, which will restore my health to a threshold of 40% at the end of an encounter if I fall below it. A great little insurance policy. I then pick up a max health increase as well, because why not? Having almost 200 HP is a lot to go into the first boss with. The first boss is one of 3 Fury Sisters, which, in their upgraded form that I've unlocked with the extreme measures from the Pact of Punishment, also features the other 2 Furies backing them up. My bow's propensity for critical hits plus the damage bonus I get if my bloodstones from my cast are embedded in an enemy means I can on average do huge hits for over 200 damage at a time with my charged frost attack, and I'm able to take her down easy, with very little damage to myself considering it is a boss fight. In this particular case, I get darkness for beating her, but using the Pact of Punishment you can get better rewards. It's just that last time I did this run with a bow, I lost to the final boss, so I've already gotten the good reward at this level of the Pact of Punishment for all but the final boss. So I'll only be getting, well, darkness in this case, instead of something fancy like Titan Blood. Anyway, next room is the stairs up to the next level of the underworld. Very exciting. This room is kind of a cool behind-the-scenes stairwell. There's a fountain here that replenishes HP, a cabinet that lets you change keepsakes if you like, as if I'm going to get rid of my 20% damage bonus. There's also a pool of Charon that lets you buy some things, though I choose not to. There's a pool of purging here that lets you sell boons. Not a choice I make often, but useful if you picked up something that doesn't work for your build, or if you'd rather purchase something else. When you exit up the stairs, you get a brief animation of you travelling from Tartarus to Asphodel. And here we are in Asphodel. Asphodel's lobby, that is. This room's always the same. I admire the view, then take the bone raft to the next room, promising me a max health upgrade. Armored Burn Flingers.
Burn fingers.
I take hits instantly. My 2% bonus days might very well be over. I overdodge and take some magma damage too, completely failing to adapt to the new challenges Asphodel presents. Still, they go down fast enough, and the second lot spawn in with a wave maker. I take him down first, and then I proceed to clean up. Then I go for the 150 Darkness Trove. Armored Dracons with a slow homing ranged attack and slam dances. I take a bit of damage and it's scary for a second there, but my knockback special really lets me create space and dodge around the horde, and I'm able to slaughter them in time to collect. You wait for it, 98 darkness, not bad. Then I'm offered both the exclamation mark of an NPC character and a boon from the god Hermes. There's no doubt in my mind that I choose Hermes without hesitating. The NPC is good, but Hermes bonuses for me can be game changing. Lots of lava in this room. Dracon and Spreaders. This room is designed to make you dodge, but dodge carefully. So, I take some damage. There's also a Skull Crusher in this room, but it dies before it gets the chance to be a nuisance. I'd say, take a moment to check out some of the cool little details, like the bursting bubbles and the mummy clutching its knees and the decor on the pots. This whole scene is pure eye candy, just like every room in this game. From Hermes I choose my favourite boons. Hyper Sprint, which gives you a half second of 100% move speed after every dash, allowing you to string your dash and sprint bonus together into very powerful dodges. Next boat, it's the level up Pomegranate. Lots of armoured Bloodless, with Dracons backing them. My new speed lets me keep just out of their reach, whilst I pulverise them. You can see how devastating my knockback piercing special is on those Bloodless. Also, note how much of a larger room with less magma benefits my dodgy style. Goes to show that Asphodel isn't entirely about burning your feet. There's an Erebus gate here, which I won't miss. This room also feels like a bit of an easy one, but those tanky Bloodless can be real tricky without such effective crowd control and anti-armor attacks. I feel like I might have gotten thrashed in here with a different build. Still, plenty of room to make this build interesting. I haven't gotten a boon for my cast, dash, or call yet, and there's lots of potential to make this build go from effective to godlike. It does mean I get to concentrate all my early game level ups into just my powerful special and attack, which is why they have become so effective. The Pomegranate levels up my Frost Strike yet again, and then I choose to go for the optional Erebus Gate rather than the next room. In an Erebus Gate, if you get hit even once, you fail, and don't get the reward. Instead, you get an onion skin for 1 HP. A combination of armoured brimstones and some burn flingers and an armoured wavemaker. I keep to the edges, dodging, and by taking my time, I'm able to whittle them all down and get my Pom reward. Erebus Gates are yet another challenging shake-up, forcing you to play the game in a more defensive way, and try another way to make your current build sing. It's amazing how different you approach the same group of enemies when you know you don't even get one hit. And hey, you might even learn something you can take back to the underworld while you're at it. This time I upgrade my special attack. And I choose yet another Hermes boon. I feel particularly lucky. This room has a bunch of armoured Spreaders and Bloodless, and I get hit a bunch. I lose the most health to a particular Bloodless, who has some kind of haste that I completely underestimate. I fail to dodge and see him coming, and he knocks me around a few good hits before I can get away and take control again. The Magma and the Spreaders working together here to basically zone me into his beatdown, and I'm fortunate there aren't more of them, and I'm fortunate that I've picked up so many max HP buffs. A lighter HP run would be in crisis after that. The Hermes boon Greater Haste, which gives me an outright movement bonus of 30%, means I get to double down on my ability to dodge and stay out of reach. I then buy an Eye of Lamia from the Pool of Kara, which gives me a chance to get small healing items from downed enemies for 3 encounters. I fail to catch a fish at a fishing point because I accidentally think that the right trigger is the right bumper for some reason in a moment of, complete duh. Oh well. And then eventually I choose the Darkness Rough and I get out of there. Entering the room, a Skull Crusher. Fortunately, he goes down fast from an explosive trap. But a second one and some Bloodless spawn in. These I run rings around and smite them handily. What comes next, however, I am not prepared for. An entire horde of petrifying Gorgon heads with some Bloodless burn flingers and a third Skull Crusher. Even with all my speed, I struggle to dodge all of the homing projectiles. These monster types work excellently together to funnel you into each other's attacks. And I take a bunch of hits. I stand in the magma and thank the gods that I have a high enough max HP that I will be right to recover from all of these mistakes. This becomes a much more technical chamber than I ever intended. Still, I persevere and I manage to pick them all off, and then I get to go to Karen's shop. The shop before the boss battle. I buy a Zeus boon and choose him to empower my cast into a lightning ball that bounces between multiple foes. A cast I know to be fast, direct, and hits multiple targets for good damage. I also buy a cheap level upgrade to one of my other boons, my special in this case. The Bone Hydra boss fight features the Hydra from the good old myth of Hercules, except it's dead, and a skeleton, and guarding the exit to Asphodel into Elysium. At fixed stages in this boss fight, the Hydra goes invulnerable and summons more but lesser heads to share the arena with. On the upgraded difficulty you see me dealing with here, there is lava all over the floor, giving you small patches which you can safely dodge on, and the main heads can float and fly about and aren't limited to a certain range. This fight also changes with the Bone Hydra having several different variations with slightly different attacks that it cycles through. My fast build with high damage at range pays off in this fight, and though I take some damage, I absolutely stomp this boss in no time. My new cast from Zeus works very well, putting big damage on the heads, and even stacking damage on the main head. I should note that Zagreus and the Hydra share a kind of hilarious ongoing joke where Zag names the Hydra Lerny, and then he attempts to befriend it. Because, well, that's just the kind of friendly, charming god Zagreus is. Lerny just hisses and tries to kill you no matter how you reach out to him, but it never stops Zagreus from trying, bless his little godly socks. And would you get a load of that awesome music? I haven't really pointed it out so far because I've had the game turned down, but really this game's music in every way is a bloody treat. So I'm just going to turn it up for the rest of the boss battle and let you experience a little bit of it. Woo boy, video game music doesn't get much better than that. So I collect my darkness, and between that and the health drop from the Eye of Lamia I bought earlier, I'm back at full HP again. Another in-between staircase room. I buy another Eye of Lamia because they are cheap and almost always useful, so I usually buy one if it's available. Then I ascend to Elysium. Beautiful Elysium. I check out the view of luscious green Elysium's rolling hills. And then I move on and I choose the Prometheus Hammer reward, because of course I'm going to choose the Prometheus Hammer. It's awesome upgrade. Armored strongbows, followed by a wave of splitters mixed in with more strongbows. The Exalted are the fallen warriors and heroes of the underworld, and they are unique. When they die, they drop their weapon. You then have to kill their little shade to get rid of them completely, otherwise they rearm and attack you again. It presents a new strategic problem for you to manage. Do you take down the dangerous foe first, or risk wasting precious seconds sealing the deal for the Exalted? In the hardest of chambers of Elysium, this can give them some serious staying power. I do take a hit, but I have relatively little trouble. It is the first room after all. Then, when I get my upgrade, I choose the Sniper Shot. It lets me do 200% damage at a distance. I figure it'll make it easier to dish out the big numbers while keeping distance and focusing on dodging. Then, I choose the Zeus Boon for my door, because, well, the other option is coin, and I'd rather a boon now than buy a boon later. Armoured long spears. Later waves of them peppered with bright swords. I'm ultra grateful that I picked the piercing upgrade in Tartarus. I find them easy to dodge and I use my special to chill them, slow them down and buy me a little time. Several times I misread their attack animation and I take some big hits. Fortunately, my max health is so high and the Eye of Lamia is dropping health drops, so I keep my health at 200. Once you start facing Exalted, the game gets a little more technical, no matter the weapon. You have to peel off and come back, give yourself breathing room, double back around traps and keep in mind many moving pieces as you whittle them down. It's an altogether more airy affair than the tight, sweaty deluges that characterise Asphodel. My cast continues to let me dish out high damage across many opponents, and you can see me using my special on the second wave to zone them into and toward traps. I get to keep them at bay despite their armour, but you can see when I fail to keep my eye on all my enemies at once and get too focused on taking someone down while I get speared in the back. I unfortunately fail to catch the last Exalted down there, and he gets to rearm and prolong the battle even though he's by himself. You'll get used to that with these annoying Exalted guys. So I grab a special kind of boon, a duo boon off Zeus, who is collaborating with his brother Poseidon on this one for the Sea Storm perk. Whenever I knock foes away, they are struck for 40 lightning damage, give or take my other modifiers. Thanks to my special firing, many knockback projectiles, I know this will make for a very powerful move. This is working out to be a great run. I choose the Darkness for the room next. The death bell tolls and Thanatos appears. When Thanatos appears in a room with you, it becomes a kind of competition. He's there to help you, but if you beat the amount of kills he gets in the room, he also gives you bonus max health for free, letting you get 2 rewards for 1 room. Anyway, the force is made up of splitters and void stones, and you always want to prioritize void stones because they make other foes invulnerable. And the last thing you need is an enemy who can attack you with impunity while you waste precious seconds losing HP. Then some Nemean chariots spawn in. These guys lock onto you, speed up and run into you, and I tell you what, they fuck me right up. They have a really high HP, and I fall into my first serious chain of mistakes in the run, because they are so much faster than I am expecting, having been buffed by my pact of punishment choices.
That's quite enough of that. You got a lot of them.
Fortunately, I can buy a healing life essence at the Well of Charon in the room, and so I'm back to full health to try a trove with 150 darkness up for grabs. To protect itself, it summons splitters and bright swords, both armoured. I do really well in this fight, and it's a very short little battle. My abilities are working in excellent synergy, and the room traps help as well. I use my speed to push them into a small killing zone, and then my high damage takes care of the rest. So, all in all, despite mistakes, I come out on top of this chamber, ready to take on Elysium.
You lived through all that.
I managed to get 100 darkness out of this thing, plus 20 more bonus. I check the Well of Charon, then I take the Poseidon door, because I love Poseidon.
Oh, hi.
Let us battle now.
The mini-boss, the Bull of Minos, Asterius, awaits me. I have very little trouble with him, as my speed buffs really let me basically run rings around him, and if I embed him with all 3 of my casts and hit him at range in the back, I can do truly massive amounts of damage on a critical hit. Asterius is one of 2 mini-bosses you can face during your time in Elysium. He's also one of 2 final bosses to the stage, whom you fight simultaneously. This game is quite generous in throwing him at you as a mini-boss to train you for the actual boss encounter a little bit down the line. It also serves to anticipate that encounter and build tension for it. When you first encounter him, he is tough and unpredictable, and if you are only just scraping by dealing with him, then the thought of simultaneously dodging him and another boss is intimidating. Unfortunately for Asterius, I'm pretty wise to his moveset, and by himself he just ain't gonna cut it. Asterius cottons on to respect, bordering on admiration for Zagreus quite early in the plot of the game, and as a result, it's quite easy to like him. So, when you encounter him by himself like this, it can feel like quite a relaxed encounter. After all, you get used to fighting him and another guy at the same time all the time. Because you always go through that boss fight every time you pass through Elysium, whereas this solo encounter you don't see every run. Sometimes you just get to see just the other mini-boss battle. This run for me felt more like a healthy sparring session between friends, though he'll still kill me good if I let him. Take a moment and enjoy the metal. He calls it. He yields to me, and then he buggers off. I collect Tidal Dash as my reward. As the name suggests, it pushes away and damages foes whenever I dash. I figure that this will interact very well with Sea Storm for damage. There's only one door out of the room, and it has ovals for reward. Teaming with strongbows. I let my strategy of keeping my distance and dealing massive damage from range work its magic. My magic cast is particularly effective and deals massive damage by bouncing around the groups. I also use my knockback to zone them. It's this second wave that really makes things hectic. Flame wheels spawn in and they're armoured too. Fortunately, my combo of knockback and lightning is very effective on them, and I need only dash near them to take them out. I do take a hit, but otherwise I clear the room easily. This next door has 2 boons depicted on it, with a skull, indicating a difficult encounter, but who can resist 2 boons, right? When Zagreus is presented 2 boons up front like this, it is a test the Olympians are throwing at you. They want to see who's your favourite. You pick one, the other gets mad and tries to kill you. If you survive, they come down and you get to keep both rewards. I love these challenges, as getting 2 boons in one room is extremely stacked, but also they are often among the most difficult. Unlike the Trobes, but a bit like the Erebus gates, it is more in your interest to be careful and take it a bit slower, as the reward doesn't decay based on time, but mistakes in health lost to panic can ruin your entire run. I always choose the god I have the most difficulty with, so I don't have to fight any foes while that particular god rains hell down on me. So I go with Poseidon, as I find his water wave thingos harder to dodge than Dionysus's little purple wells of fog. I choose wave pounding as my reward, which lets me deal plus 30% damage to bosses with any attack that deals knockback. Given I have 2 buttons that do knockback and the 2 most difficult major bosses to go, it seems prudent. From Dionysus I get Dionysus Aid, which gives me a powerful right trigger call ability that you gain once you've unlocked it by dealing or taking a certain amount of damage. Dionysus's abilities inflict hangover, and the call one starts at 15 damage a second, which also seems to be an excellent way to quickly sap HP from a boss. Allow me to take a moment to talk about the striking visual style of Elysium. The use of colour gives it a dreamlike glow. This pops in contrast to the intense red, sweaty heat of Asphodel, and makes the lush meadow greens of Elysium feel light and placid. The wonderful wispy cloud-like nature of the river Leith, if I'm pronouncing that right anyway, it just adds to the airiness. There's ornate pillars, royal purple energy bolts, and mastercraft works to deploy them. The Elysian Fields lives up to its reputation as a warrior's paradise. Perhaps too literally, as the NPC Patroclus likes to hint. The river makes those who drink from it forget. Is that a blessing for a blood-soaked great hero, or a curse for a man's cherished memories? Back to the room at hand, I've had a huge wave of great shields thrown at me. They are something my build is actually really well equipped to deal with, but the combination of great shields and strongbows throws me, and I get hit by one of the strongbows while trying to hit a great shield in the back. I do manage to finish them off and collect my obolds, but it's a hard-won victory. I'd like to take note of how the music here helps to encourage that sort of more tedious, strategic eking out of your victory. It sort of has a more methodical, strung out quality to it that I really appreciate the thoughtfulness behind the composition here. And the way it drops out just the bass when the danger of the encounter's over. Oh, that's just like chef's kiss. Beautiful.
I can take it.
The inky black void, the mysterious realm of chaos. Unsatisfied with my first round of boons, I use one of my Mirror of Night powers and get a new 3 offered up, which aren't as good as the previous 3 I was just offered. But because I fear the upcoming boss conflict, I go with the one that ups my cast cooldown to 11.25 seconds, but after 4 encounters I get 60% more obols. It just seems the least penalising of all the options. And then of the options I choose to go to Karen's store in the next room, because I know, well, the boss battle's coming up and it's always smart to go visit the store right before the boss. That is, if you've got the obols. If you don't have the obols, the other option exists, so that at least you get some sort of reward before you progress to the final boss. Although you can get entirely new boons from the store, so, you know, if you can, you save up for the store right before the boss. And you only choose the other option if, well, you just haven't been so lucky that session. At the store, I grab a Poseidon boon. Razor Shoals, which further modifies my knockback powers. Now on knockback, not only do foes get struck by lightning, and bosses take extra damage, it also ruptures them, which for 3 seconds makes them take 10 damage every 0.2 of a second, so long as they are moving. As you see, this game really lets you run powers into each other and create exponentially more dangerous effects. Then I buy a health boost, almost completely healing me, and buy a POM upgrade, making my Dionysus core ability do 21 damage every half a second instead of 15. I catch a fish, this time a carp, and then I proceed to the boss, and also smashing some pot.
A challenger!
The final encounter for Elysium involves both the Bull of Minos teaming up with the hero of myth who bested, Theseus. And because I have the hard mode bosses unlocked, they are wearing golden armor, and Theseus has a chariot with miniguns and grenade launchers. It's pretty cool. I do love the way this game, despite being set in the ancient Greek underworld, embraces quite modern visual details and ideas, like these kind of ancient spiritual gun thingos that everyone gets to use, including Zagreus in the adamant rail. My build is actually really well suited for dealing with this fight, but nevertheless I take a lot of hits, more through my own incompetence than any particular challenge that this fight presents me now. It isn't uncommon for me to lose a Death Defiance, sort of like a life when I do this fight. But with a build as powerful as this, I'm definitely not expecting to. Nevertheless, I max out my call from taking so much damage, and as predicted, the 21 damage every half a second for at least a stack of 5 does massive damage to the Minotaur. And though he does manage to stop me getting the full duration on him with his big spinning around attack move there, it still doesn't take me much longer after dealing that to take him down for good. Fortunately, King Theseus has very predictable moves in his chariot, and he basically likes to drive around in a big circle, blowing everything in a ring up around him. So I'm able to dodge around him with confidence while I whittle the last of Asterius' health down to 0. Once it's just me and Theseus, the first thing I do is blow his chariot up. And boom. He calls on Athena's aid in this particular instance, although in other runs he calls on other gods. Athena hits me with a big spear attack, as well as at some point forces me to dodge into one of Theseus' spin attacks. How embarrassing. Other than that, I'm able to quickly wipe him out. He may have a lot of room coverage and the ability to block and hit you at range, but his attacks are telegraphed from a light year away, and you always know where his weakness is. Watch as I dodge at a distance only to jump behind him and unload into his back whenever I get the window. Combine that with the knockback on my dash just casually dishing it out, he's one dead hero. The darkness he drops heals a bunch of damage, and I'm above 200 HP as I leave the room. A victory lap and I'm gone.
You shades enjoy yourselves.
The fountain takes me back to my max HP. The well has nothing I want, so up the stairs I go and the cool underworld transition animation plays. A little glimpse behind the scenes at your father's mechanisms that run the underworld. Good for smashing pots too. The Cerberus-themed lobby of the Temple of Styx. It's the only room you come back to multiple times in a single run. Even though we come back here and nothing much changes, I will count this room every time. Some bothers and a snake stone. More powerful versions of the pests and brimstones from Tartarus. I wipe them out lickety-split, my knockback-based powers effective in these small rooms. A full horde of crawlers, or little rat vermin. My AoE dash ability pops them like little virulent disease-filled balloons and I'm done in seconds. Two Satyrs. I normally find them a challenging enemy as they spit poisonous darts and have a lot of HP, but the knockback just chews them right up. The end of this tunnel features a larger than average Satyr mini-boss, and lots of crawlers. I managed to get poisoned 3 times, but my speed lets me use the healing pools in the room to clear it before it does too much damage. My piercing knockback special melts his armor fast and then kills him in no time, leaving me to just clean up the crawlers with my dash AoE and collect my reward. A Demeter boon. I choose Killing Freeze, which inflicts 25 damage per half second decay when all my enemies are hit with a chill status effect. Only my main attack inflicts chill, and it's unlikely to hit everyone in the room, but I figured it would be useful on bosses when they are by themselves. Without even looking, I zip straight for the Zeus reward tunnel. 2 Satyrs. I get hit with poison but clear it for minimal damage and tear them apart fairly quickly. I get hit once again just as I take them out. Fortunately, that clears the poison as well. Crawlers again. I just zip around in a circle and they all go boom. The crawlers are so small and their attack animations are so fast they can be very hard to see. They're particularly dangerous when you have bigger, larger enemies distracting you. The Well of Charon has a +1 use for my cast. A bonus always welcome when you've got a high damage cast. bothers and crawlers and a big blade. The whole lot go down in seconds, and I don't even stop to think.
There it is.
The Fountain Room. This is where you find the treat that lets you distract Cerberus so you can escape. Ideally, you want to find this room in the last tunnel so you get the healing effects of the fountain right before you fight the big man himself. But I ain't complaining. I grab Static Discharge as my Zeus boon, which makes any foe affected by my lightning effect jolted, which means my victim's next attack will self-inflict 80 lightning damage. This also hurts nearby enemies as well. So now my knockback attacks knock back my enemies back, damage them when they move, afterwards hits them with lightning that then damages them again when they go to attack me, all with a plus 30% extra damage to bosses, and 2 of my major moves do this. Hell yeah, this is what being a god is all about. With just a moment's hesitation, I go for the max health upgrade tunnel. Classic two-siders big trap room. They are reduced to the consistency of soup in no time. Even more crawlers. Dead before you can ask what's for dinner, mum. Some giant vermin, and a bother. Best dealt with at a distance, and my 4 casts and knockback are perfect for this. They do not last very long. Snake stones and bothers. Snake stones plus knockback plus wall slam equals shattered snake stone. This room clears fast, but I do dodge straight into a trap and take 20 damage. Okay, so this larger challenge room has an entire plague's worth of crawlers respawning in it. It's a lot of fun watching them get struck by lightning. The faster claustrophobic little rooms, followed by the big challenge rooms with the boon in them, really ups the rhythm in the late stages of the run, and I'm feeling the anticipation. With the addition of an armoured snake stone, I take a hit. I knock the stone around and take advantage of it to keep it off my back. After I take him down, some bothers and giant vermin spawn in, and I end up taking some poison damage, although I still manage to clear it fast. These Styx rooms tend to have a lot of area denial going on in them, in both the monsters and in the traps. Still, my bouncy electric ball cast comes in handy taking out groups at range, and I'm out of there with a total of 271 of 295 max HP, which is pretty good at this late stage of a run. I take my max health reward, I jump in the portal. I notice how much money I have, and I go buy myself the Exy Poseidon boon from Karen. I choose Breaking Wave to make my knockback effects even more ludicrous. If I slam a foe into a barrier, it creates a watery blast in the area that deals 200 damage. This build feels pretty good at this point. I choose the path with the POM upgrade. Some snake stone and bothers. I let my knockback do all the work and I'm through.
Not now.
My cast and my knockback mince these giant vermin and these crawlers. By the time you get to the Temple of Styx, anything that knocks or bounces stuff around is super fun. Two bothers and a Sada, and they last about 2 seconds. A repeat of the last room, and it lasts just about as long. Feeling overpowered yet? Another mini-boss. An especially giant vermin, in a room teeming with traps, that also spawns in area-denying bothers. Fortunately, my very powerful build creams them, although it doesn't prevent me dodging into a trap. Sorry Thanatos, I doubt I'll be getting any more bonuses from you this run. I choose to upgrade my Dionysus' Aid again this time, so it does 29 damage every half a second. After seeing how quickly this one sapped the Minotaur's HP, I am confident this will help me out with the final boss.
Down the chute.
I go and I buy a Dionysus' boon from Charon. It offers me a cool duo boon, but taking it would be pointless because although more potent boons is one of the best bonuses in the entire game, I am so late in the run now I think this is probably the last boon I will get to choose altogether. So I go with Positive Outlook, which makes me take 10% less damage when I'm at 40% or below HP. Then I catch a gup at the fishing point and I go for the last tunnel, the Obal's Tunnel. Room 62. We already learned our lesson about knockback and snake stones, didn't we? The Well of Charon has Hydrolite, which restores 10% of health when you enter a chamber for 3 chambers. This is almost always worth getting this late in the game. Zagreus smash snake stone. Zagreus makes snake stone go shatter. Crawlers go squish, although it doesn't prevent some of them from getting a little bite or two in on me. Little blighters. What else is there to say except crawlers go squish again? Armoured bothers and satyrs to knock around in a room full of a lot of area-denying traps. This is one of the hardest rooms in the game and I often struggle with it. I accidentally get stuck in a corner at one point and take a couple of big hits, so I'm very grateful to the Hydrolite I have topping up my HP. This room is so hard because when you dodge from one thing, you almost always dodge into another, whether it's an explosion, some poison, a big spinning blade, and then when you go to cure yourself of the poison, you usually dodge into something else. It is quite a tour de force of clever game design for Hades, and a real test of your skills. I buy up the last of the POMs on offer at Charon's store. With that I get my static discharge and my jolted effects upgraded, so lightning afflicted foes now take 141 damage whenever they attack, and then upgraded again to make it 159 damage, knowing full well that I'll only need to hit the boss with my special at range, or dash past him to guarantee that damage. I offer Cerberus the sack, he buggers off, and I open the last door. It's cute the way the game assures you he's fine and the banner at the top. The last chamber isn't a room, but a little snowed-in glade outside the temple. This is where you and your dad throw down. I've only been fighting the hardest version of Hades for 4 or 5 runs at the point of recording. I'd only beaten him once before with the difficulty unlocked, and that was with, in my opinion, the most overpowered weapon and the most overpowered aspect. That is, the aspect of Lucifer for the adamant rail. I was going into this one pretty uncertain of my chances, although I knew my build was very powerful indeed. I find his first stage quite easy this time around. The crowd control and chained damage from the ridiculous knockback abilities really helps me keep the foes that he summons at bay. And these aren't just foes that he summons, they're full-blown mini-bosses when you have the harder difficulty unlocked. I really struggle with this stage usually because of these mini bosses, so it is nice to have a build that's actually equipped to deal with them. As predicted, my call power, Dionysus' Aid, deals brutal amounts of hangover or poison damage, and it's because I use it that his first stage goes down without me even losing one of my lives, otherwise known as death defiances. See? Watch how much damage it does. He's lucky he got to go impervious there. Because you earn heat for your call, you can see it building up in the bottom left there. Whenever you do damage and take damage, or at least on this build I do, I'm able to earn a second one of those highly damaging Dionysus's call in absolutely no time, and then use it to take him down the rest of the way. This bodes very well.
You asked for this.
His second stage starts well, with me just keeping my distance and trying to get in shots wherever I can. The music is really ratcheted up a notch, and it really fits because at this point he's very dangerous. Hades hits for massive amounts of damage that in 3 or 4 good ones can usually kill you outright. At this stage he summons these weird ghost phase things where if they touch you, not only do they do a lot of damage, they also hold you still for a moment so Hades can hit you again. His entire build is set up for you to, if you make one mistake, chain that into several other mistakes. And you can watch a full health run very quickly go from doing extremely well to almost dead just because you got hit by one of those vases. It can be quite frustrating, but at the same time, they're giant, livid, Tartarus, glowing green things, and they're quite generously spaced given the speed of your dodge. Similarly, his Blood Skull things, they fire these AoE attacks that deny you an area. You can dodge them, but it's very easy to forget they're there sometimes, and they force you to cut your teeth very thin when dodging. It's here that it all goes wrong. My Dionysus attack forces me and I get hit by his beam. Then I dodge into a spin attack he does while trying to lay him out. And I think that's what really loses it for me here, despite his small chunk of HP that's left for the stage. He summons Cerberus, I fail to dodge, and bam! Death Defiance wasted. But lo and behold, I fuck up again almost immediately and take some more big hits. Fortunately, I don't totally kick the bucket before his third incredibly difficult stage kicks in, and I do manage to whittle him down. But I tell you what, the closer and closer I get to losing one more Death Defiance, the scarier and scarier that third stage looks.
Fight me for real, Daniel.
Musical transition is absolutely awesome, isn't it? So when you enter this third stage, he puts this shade on the screen, which severely reduces your dodging advantage. And, you know, you rely on that dodging advantage. Anyway, I've got my Dionysus' call to inflict massive damage on him, and that's what my strategy is going to have to be if I hope to win. But just as I use it, I lose another life, because I have to recklessly get close to him. With 1 life left, my comfort zone buffer is quickly drying up. And seeing as I keep on taking hit after hit after hit, it seems like I'm going to go the way of the dinosaur very, very quickly. I have to deal out some really serious damage to this guy fast. He's got half HP left still if I have any hope of winning this battle. I'm really only just scraping by here. I'm reacting to things as quickly as I see them, and I am getting hit a heck of a lot. Fortunately for me, every time I get hit, it charges up my call really quickly, and that's really my only chance of winning this fight. If I'm going to lose my last life and my only buffer between myself and permadeath here, then I may as well lose it for a good reason. So, when it does go, I know I'm mere moments away from being able to take that last quarter of HP off. It's definitely a race for the bottom now. Hallelujah, I did it. And with respectable 75 HP, or 2 hits from death approximately left. After you beat him, the game lets you review your build and stats before you get to grab your rewards and end the run. If I wasn't so far in the game, when you leave the glade you get to see a little bit of sort of story related content. But given that I've sort of completed and wrapped that up at this stage, instead, you just die randomly off screen for pretty much any reason. Oh, I also get to catch one last fish before I exit the glade. Isn't that nifty? The reasons you die when you exit, by the way, they can be pretty funny.
Despite having transcended past the confines of the underworld yet again,
Prince Zagreus proves utterly unable to get past this point.
All in all, that was a pretty great run, and the stuff good Hades sessions are made of. Once back at the house, you get to do all the usual stuff. Talk to the characters and see what's progressed, turn in your fish, go to the rewards shop and upgrade the house, or trade in some rewards for others in the weird currency exchange program thing. Anyway, I've had about enough for one session, and I decide to turn it off and go and write this. But next up, I'm going to do another run with exactly the same weapon, but not tediously go through it all room by room. I'm just going to give you the notes and show you how different a Hades run can be, even if all else is pretty much the same.
I knew that Nyx had her concerns about Zeus's propensity to...
Hey, don't you stretch that thing, William.
My keepsakes.
So, this time around I choose a different keepsake, the lambent plume from Hermes. If I clear a room fast, I get a 1.2% speed boost. More speed is always appreciated in this game. Because I beat Hades on the last one, I need to up the stakes on my Pact of Punishment, so I had Calisthenics program to give everything that little bit more health. Off I go, and my starting boon is from Aphrodite, and I choose to make my attack stronger and inflict weak. By the end of Tartarus, I have Frost Flourish, which makes my special stronger and inflicts chill. Relentless Volley, which gives me +4 shots in my special. Nourished Soul, all the healing I find is more potent, and I have a 7.2% move speed bonus from the Lambent Plume. By the end of Asphodel, I have Heaven's Vengeance. I do lightning damage in revenge after I take damage. Strong Drink. Fountain restores all my health and gives bonus damage. And Trippy Shot, which is for my cast. It lobs a cloud of trippy fog for a lot of damage. By the end of Elysium, I have Flurry Shot. Gives me a rapid fire attack, but no power shot. Sweet Surrender. Weak afflicted foes take 10% extra damage. Thunder Dash. Dash causes lightning bolts to strike nearby foes. Ice Wine, which is a duo power. My cast blasts an area with Festive Fog that inflicts chill and does plus 30% damage. It's also a very, very powerful attack. Ravenous Will. When I have no bloodstones, I take 10% less damage and I deal more, encouraging me to always be using my cast. Greater Recall. My bloodstones return automatically with a 0-second delay. This allows me, of course, to continue continuously casting my cast. Demeter's Aid. Demeter's core power creates a winter vortex that grows over 5 seconds and inflicts chill, has a 10-second duration and does 11 damage every quarter of a second. Now, it's not one of my favourite core powers, but it is reasonably powerful and the chill effect is very useful. And my Lambent Plume is now at 12%. By the end of the Temple of Styx, I have Greater Haste, plus 30% move speed, Unhealthy Fixation. Weak effects have 15% chance to charm foes for 4 seconds, and a charmed foe fights for you with its greater strength and speed than it originally has. Scintillating Feast, which is a duo power. My Festive Fog also deals 60 lightning damage periodically, which makes my cast an extremely powerful chain power on this particular run, and I'm very happy about it going into this Hades battle. And Empty Inside. By the Hades fight, I had a very powerful build, but I just did not play very well, and I took lots of big hits early. I opened strong, but without any powerful knockback or crowd control abilities like last run, I really started to struggle when he summoned his Doomstone and Gorgon help. I lost the Death Defiance before the first stage was down. I entered his second stage with only 69 HP. I take hits immediately and lose another Death Defiance straight away. Fortunately, my build's high damage means I am able to get him back on the ropes again, but he summons Cerberus and that spells the end of any genuine chance I had. I completely fail to dodge, and he takes my last Death Defiance straight after. The high damage of my build lets me finish him off, but I know I have no chance in stage 3. Everything goes dark, he speeds up, the metal starts playing. I am able to take a good chunk out of his HP, but I last less than 30 seconds and completely fail to see some of those boiling blood skull shockwave things.
All shall soon decay.
Bam! Back to the House of Hades with me. The two runs started out playing virtually identical, but on the first run I got my special and dash into powerful duo loops with knockback and lightning that let me keep enemies off me while I remained highly mobile, as well as dishing out stacking damage. In the second run, my cast became my real gun ability, with freezing fog that instantly deployed for massive damage, and debuffs, and that instantly recovered so I could spam it with powerful rapid fire attacks. I certainly had damage on my side, but unfortunately with Hades, he is just too fast for me and just does so much damage that if your dodge or defense game isn't on point, and he summons a lot of hectic stuff to make it really hard for that to be on point, then one small mistake quickly leads into a whole spiraling chain of mistakes that can rob a high health Zagreus of an entire run in a second. Still, I didn't do entirely badly on the second run, which was slightly harder because I had to up the stakes on the Pact of Punishment due to the fact I did so well on that first run. Given I am still not completely across the rhythms and movements and tricks of Extreme Measures Unlocked Hades, the run fills me with hope that if I keep at it, I will eventually have him completely mastered. And with that, I make my case for the true appeal of this game. I think I've provided enough evidence of the juicy visuals. I hope you also notice the smoothness of the animations that allow for excellent readability of gameplay. The game knows how to teach itself to you and keep you hooked enough to keep trying, difficult enough to remain challenging, and flexible enough to not be frustrating. The music is terrific and evocative, using composition to evoke the Grecian underworld, old school PC games, and heavy driving guitar musics. It's always scripted and deployed delectably, hyping you up for crazy boss fights, stringing you out for technical challenges, or calming you down for rests. The diegetic in-game music that Orpheus and Eurydice sings is so good I'd have happily listened to it on my MP3 player on the bus to and from school on tinny little earbuds if this had come out in 2005. And that's high praise indeed. There's even a kind of Easter egg banger about the actual crazy Zagreus mythology fragments that exist in real life, that Orpheus writes in-game based on piss-take bullshit that Zagreus feeds him. It is top-shelf stuff that few games can boast to do as well. As for criticism, well, the game reminds me of the original Portal, in that I think they knew exactly where to stop and limit the scope of the game. If it had done more, it would have been easy to criticise, but because it is such a tight, focused project, with so much love and attention to detail poured into every moment, it is very hard to criticise it. Certainly, it is limited in the sense that you must mention and pitch the scope as a part of the appeal of the game. I saw plenty of Steam user reviews saying that the repetitiveness, the limited levels and foes, and the lack of movement from the same set of levels over and over were very unappealing and bored them, and they didn't get the celebration of this game. While this game rocks my world, I think there are many a gamer out there who it will fundamentally not vibe with, and I think that's perfectly okay. I can obviously rave about this game for a long time, but I would absolutely not recommend it for everybody. Although I think it has about as a broad appeal as any game like this could have, especially with the inclusion of the God mode that would let someone who found the gameplay frustrating just enjoy the visuals and music. Although I do question exactly how long an experience this game would be if you took advantage of that. This scope issue hits the story too. It seems very lofty and, well, mythic at first, what with all the gods and shades and stuff. But very quickly, the sort of dating sim visual novel genre conventions trump the mythic conventions, and in a quirky and fresh twist, the plot is mostly about very simple human family drama. It's relatable that the gods have miscommunications and familial social failings that carry heavy feelings like shame and require bravery, courage, and honesty to resolve. It is not, however, some epic myth stuff where escaping the underworld fundamentally changes the mythological or cosmological order. At the end of the day, the only progress in Hades is emotional and not so much plot-wise. Not that there isn't anything at all, of course. There's plenty of implications that the drama in your family affects the world of the living in a big way, and the stuff about your mother is good, but even the climax to the central story kind of happens off-screen. The story and plot feel a lot closer to a classical comedy than tragedy, in that it's all about misunderstandings that resolve. I don't necessarily think of this as a criticism. As mentioned, it feels kind of fresh, as this sort of twitchy button-mashing fun is usually associated with either a very different kind of non-ironic serious like Diablo, or a slick hyper-irony where it's all style like Nidhogg. To get something sincere and emotionally mature is very enjoyable direction to take this kind of thing. Look at another game where you fight through hell, like Doom. Genuine emotionally intelligent dialogue is not usually a feature in these kind of video games. The rub is that it is the whole kit and caboodle. The game just doesn't have telling a big story in its sights. This is a story about settling old secrets and hurts in a family, and about a young man finding his place in the order of the world. It's really very quaint. It's just that the family is the pantheon of Olympians and chthonic gods, rather than a family in the suburbs. Or given its visual novel roots, school kids in Tokyo. I definitely think this will completely fail to hook some kinds of gamer, as it just doesn't really go anywhere in terms of conflict and dramatic stakes that many games thrive on to couple with their action and strategy. You can't just invite the antagonist to tea and have a polite and mature conversation where everyone admits some error and then work out their differences during most video game stories. It just doesn't really usually raise the stakes or give you good motivation to go smashing a bunch of buttons in an arena somewhere. While that's not exactly what happens in Hades, it's the kind of direction they go in with many of the characters and conflicts in the game, and it's nice to play something different, but yeah, it definitely is not the most self-serious dramatic game with demonic forces of evil and divine justice. It's you and your dad, your mum and your weird cast of uncles, aunts, cousins, half-brothers, lovers, and the friction of living together and understanding one another. In the underworld. I don't have any footage of this because I didn't decide to start making the video until afterwards and I didn't get a recording. But at some point in the game, Achilles says he has a theory about what you are the god of. He thinks you are the god of blood. Given your bloodstones that you use for your cast, and that you spend all of your time spilling blood through the underworld, it seems appropriate. But maybe there's another reason. Your ability to socialise and charm and speak honestly and frankly with courage amongst your family, actions that bring them closer together and in turn change the world. It kind of makes Zagreus like the blood of their family, and given that in the game you are the nexus through which they interact, even gameplay wise, you almost literally are the lifeblood of the Pantheon. It's particularly neat because it turns out Zagreus was already doing what he was made to do all along. But like in life, it's not until you look back with the context of experience and progress that you can see and move on from those emotions and grow. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the video. You can probably tell it's my first time making something like this, and I can certainly see lots of room for improvement. Anyway, I have plans for a heap of videos to make yet. I'll be hitting the most classic of all YouTube vibes next, Minecraft. I'm hoping that I'll improve with each video. I only have pretty fundamental editing production skills, and I need to do something about the mouth noises on my microphone, and many other things. I've just opened a Patreon for this project, so if you'd like to support me, that would be much appreciated. Link in the description of the video. Supporters will go into the credits at the end of each video, and $10 or more gets you verbally credited as a mate. Well, if I get any supporters, that is. Any financial support I receive basically buys me time and possibly equipment to produce more and better videos. What is it every YouTuber has to say? Oh yeah, like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.
Really